You're listening to episode 75 of the Journey to Launch podcast. I'm Jamila's mom, and today she's going to be interviewing me on the show. Good job, Mom.
T-minus 10 seconds.
Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast with your host, Jamila Souffrant. As a money expert who walks her talk, she helps brave journeyers like you get out of debt, save, invest, and build real wealth. Join her on the journey to launch to financial freedom in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, journeyers. Hi, welcome back. If you are a returning journeyer, if you're new to the podcast, grab a seat, get in the rocket, let's take off. I'm really excited to bring you probably the most important and special interviews that I've done to date. As you heard in the intro, it's with someone very special to me, and that's my mom. So I wanted to interview my mom for a number of reasons. And the first one is that I talk about her so much and give her credit for my story, for how I became the person I am today. So why not bring her on the show so you can hear it for yourself? Also, as you're here in our conversation, we're going to explore how she was able to raise me as a young single immigrant mom to be the person I am today. How she, without much, put me in a position to build wealth, to shorten that wealth gap from her generation to my generation, and how I'm taking that wealth baton and passing it on to my kids so that they can get even a better start than I had. So she put me in this amazing position to prosper, which is why I am excited to share that this podcast episode is sponsored by Wells Fargo on a financial education initiative, Prepare to Prosper. It's designed to build financial capability and help address the African American wealth gap. And that's why I'm so excited to bring this to you today, this episode, because it's featuring my mom. We're going to be talking about this wealth gap, and you'll hear in the interview what she was able to do for me, preparing me to prosper. And that's why I'm able to be in the position I am today. So it was like a no-brainer, an immediate yes, when I was asked to talk about this campaign and all the amazing things that Wells Fargo is doing to help address this alarming wealth gap issue for Black people. So let's briefly just talk about the wealth gap, what it is, and what Wells Fargo is doing to help address it before we get into the interview. Now, these stats are from the Economic Policy Institute, Forbes magazine, and the U.S. Census Bureau. But here are the stark facts. In 2016, the median wealth of white households was $171,000. That's 10 times the wealth of Black households, which was $17,000. For most U.S. families, a home usually comprises the largest portion of their assets. Only 45% of Black Americans own a home compared to 73% of whites. Blacks are less likely to have jobs that include employer-sponsored health care, retirement plans, and paid time off. So this results in spending more of their savings on emergencies, lacking funds to start businesses, and fewer options for wealth building. And that's just some of the stats. So this is why this is such an important topic to talk about. And that's why I strongly believe that it's the responsibilities of companies who are taking our money, who we are working with, who are in our communities, doing business with us to help provide these solutions and address the issue. So it is so nice to see that Wells Fargo is working with community-based organizations to fund housing, counseling programs, deliver home ownership education, to teach savings and good credit, and to really help address this wealth gap. They have tons of free resources and tools and services on their site. And so I want you to go check that out at wellsfargo.com/financial-education. There you'll find tons of articles and tools to help you with credit management, learning how to invest, and reaching your financial goals. Again, you can find more information at wellsfargo.com/financial-education. Okay, and without further ado, I want to hop into this conversation with my mom. If you want any of the episode show notes for this, you can go to journeytolaunch.com/episode 75. All right, let's jump in. Hey, journeyers. I am so excited to have a very special guest, my mom. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Jamila.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
So I wanted to have you on the podcast because I talk about you a lot. I talk about you on this podcast. I talk about you in basically every interview when someone asks, why I'm who I am today and my experience and what has allowed me to become the Jamila I am today. And I give all that credit to you. I talk about you being a single mom, having me at a young age, and coming here from Jamaica. I'm sure people, my listeners, journeyers, are almost probably sick of me always saying that. But I thought it'd be really interesting to actually have you on the podcast and share your story. Because I do feel like what you were able to accomplish coming here from another country as a young single mom and putting me on the track and on this level that I am today, I mean, it's amazing. Like, I'm impressed. Being a mom myself now, seeing how hard it is. And I have help. You know, I have way more help than you had. I have a lot more resources than you had. And it's still hard. You know, it's still just a struggle in terms of just balancing that all. So I thought it'd be really inspiring. Hopefully, journeyers, if you heard from my mom directly, her experience and just how she raised me, and then hopefully you can draw some tidbits from that for inspiration for your own life. So all that to say, thank you so much, Mom, for being here.
You're welcome.
So I know you're nervous, and that's okay. We are just gonna talk normal, right? We're gonna pretend the mic is not here, and we'll be okay. All right, Mom, I want you to just tell everyone a little bit about your background, where you were born and your life growing up in Jamaica.
Hi, everyone. I was born in St. James, Montego Bay. I grew up in different parts of the country. So even though I was born in St. James, I lived in Westmoreland. That's where my mom is from. I also lived in Kingston for maybe about 3 years. And then I went back to Montego Bay, and that's where I went to part of my elementary school education, but definitely my entire high school education.
So you spent basically, most of your growing life, I guess, your coming of age in Jamaica. And so when did I come into the picture? Because you were young when you had me, right? So how was that? Just talk a little bit about becoming pregnant with me and then finding out and how that changed things for you.
I had finished high school in Jamaica at about 17, going on 18. And I got pregnant with you at 19 and had you at 20. I already graduated from high school and did 1 year community college in Jamaica. They had what's called community college, but it was just for 1 year. And I attended. They offered a secretarial studies there. I did it. I wasn't interested in it. It was just that there was nothing else to do. After I finished that, I worked for a short time in Montego Bay at a government office. And it was after that I got pregnant with you and had you at 20. Now, when you were about 9 months old, that's when I left you and came here to Brooklyn, New York.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to step back because, again, I can't imagine being so young and having that responsibility. What were you what were your emotions? If you could put yourself back in your those shoes, time travel back. What did you feel? What did you feel like your future was more bleak? Did you feel disappointed? Were you excited? I'm just curious, and it's okay to be honest.
Thinking back, I was a natural people person and I love children. I used to help with my nieces and nephews. So when I got pregnant with you, I wasn't ready to have a child. I was shocked, surprised. At the same time, I know it's my responsibility. So I just accepted it and said, it is what it is. I can't send this baby back to where it came from. So I'm just going to have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you talk about that you left me at 9 months old in Jamaica. So what prompted you, or how were you able to come to the U.S. and leave me behind? How did that all work?
My father sponsored me. When I was in high school, he had petitioned for me to come to the United States because he was already here with his family. He was married and he had his wife and 2 children with his current wife. And so when I was in high school, he had petitioned for me and two of my other siblings by him. But the paperwork took a very long time to come through. So if it was supposed to come through while I was attending high school, but it didn't. So it was after I had you that my father came to Jamaica because he was wondering what was taking so long. It's been well over the time. So when he came out to investigate to find out what was happening, I already had you, and the paperwork came through soon after that. So I had no choice but to come because I could have stayed, but at the time, there wasn't much options for me in Jamaica. My mom was there, but she was doing her best to help support me and you and my younger brother. So I took the opportunity to come once the paperwork came through.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you knew that you would have a much better chance of making a life for yourself if you came to the States. And so you came to New York. You came to Brooklyn, New York.
I came to Brooklyn, New York, where my dad lived. Yes.
Okay. All right. And so what did you do? So I'm imagining now you leave me behind, which I can't even imagine being how was that? And what were you like?
I was devastated. And that was really, really hard. That was the hardest thing I had to do because I felt like I was abandoning you, and I just didn't want to do that. But I realized at that time, if I came to America, that I could finish my education and I could take advantage of the other opportunities that I have here. So because my mom was there and I felt a little bit more comfortable leaving you with her. So I came, it was hard. It was really, the first couple of months, I was devastated. And I decided I have to get a job as soon as I can because I need to work to take care of you. You were my responsibility.
So was the plan all along that you would come to the United States and then try to bring me up too? Or did you plan on just like kind of sending money back? Like, did you know exactly what you were going to do? Or you was like, let me just come to New York first and figure it out?
I had no idea. Actually, at the time, I knew I was coming to America. I think I had about 1 week notice that I was coming. I had no idea at 8 months that I was going to leave you and come to America. When you turn 9 months, I had no idea. When my father showed up, it was about a week's notice that I have. So the turnaround was so fast that I really didn't have a plan. When I got here, I developed a plan. I know something had to happen. I have to be reunited with you as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. That was my goal. And there was light at the end of the tunnel because it just so happened that my aunt, who is my mother's sister, was also petitioning for me to come here. And she was petitioning for my mom and for me and my brother to come here. So at the back of my mind, I knew at some point my mom's application was going to come through, and I don't know how you get to come, but I know there will be something will happen.
Okay, so you knew that in your heart that something would work out.
Yeah, I kind of sensed something would work out.
First of all, I think it's kind of crazy that you had like a week to make that decision. I can only imagine. Okay. All right. Let's just now jump a little forward to when you're now in New York by yourself. I mean, you're staying with family, but what did you do? Like, what was your first job? Like, now you're not only in like a new country, you're in a new country you've never been. You never came to New York before that, right?
No.
New country. You just left your 9-month-old baby behind, which, by the way, because Blake, my daughter that was just born, your granddaughter, is 6 months now. So like, I feel that as like a mom having a baby that young. So you're in a new place and you just left your baby behind. What are you now like doing? Where did you even work? Like what were you doing?
My father at the time had a cousin that she lived in New Jersey, and she was a manager of a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant, and he arranged with her to help me get a job. So after staying in Brooklyn for maybe about a month or two, I went to New Jersey to live with my cousin so I could work at the restaurant where she was a manager. And so that was my first job, working at that restaurant.
Now, I didn't ask you this, but did you, like, did you have any money when you came here?
I had nothing.
So you had like $0, nothing.
I had nothing.
All right. And so you started working at KFC, and now this was your opportunity to have some money to do something with.
Yes.
Okay. So what did you, all right. So how was that experience? And then what was that experience like now working at KFC? Like, just explain a little bit about your work situation and all that.
I put my heart into it, even though I didn't like it, but I was just grateful to have a job and to be able to earn money so that I could send money back home to my mom to take care of you. Because I felt guilty that I had to leave you behind. And at the time, my mom wasn't working, so I wanted to make certain that you were provided for. So when I get paid every other week, I sent money out of every paycheck that I got back home to my mom so that to ensure that she will be able to take care of you at the highest quality level possible.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and this was a minimum wage job, so I'm sure you weren't making that much, but it was probably good money for you at that point?
I wasn't working much, but because I was living with my cousin, that was helpful because she didn't charge me rent. So whatever I earned, it was basically, it was for me, and I spent it wisely. I sent like half of it back home to you, and the rest I guess I saved it, took care of myself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you weren't like so budgeting or anything. What did you know about money at that point?
It was all in my head. I just knew that I couldn't spend everything that I worked because I still had to take care of myself, buy my clothes, buy my food. And I even did shopping for you to send you back stuff home. So everything was just in my head. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I didn't have a bank account or anything like that.
Okay, so what was the next step after KFC? You're working there. I know, just knowing you as my mom, you're a hard worker, and I'm sure like the wheels are turning now. So what do you do after KFC? What is the plan while you're working there?
Well, while within the year that I was at KFC, my mother heard from immigration that her paperwork was coming through for her to come here. And that I was devastated again because I told my mom she could not leave you in Jamaica because remember, no one had filed for you. When my dad filed for me, I was still in high school. You were nowhere near, you weren't in the picture at the time. When my aunt filed for my mom and put me and my brother in the petition, again, you were nowhere around. So you weren't on any petition to be sponsored. So when my mom heard from immigration and she was told she had 3 months before the paperwork came through for her to travel, I was devastated. So I told her she need to let them know that she's taking care of her granddaughter and her mom is here and there was no one else to take care of her. And that made me even work more money because I wanted to prove to the government that I could take care of you. So I worked a lot of hours and
you were still just working at KFC, or did you have another job then?
I was only working at KFC.
Okay. So can I ask this, and it's okay if you don't want to answer, but where was my father at that time? He wasn't capable of taking care of me?
I mean, he would show up at my mother's house and like bring you like your food and milk, but it wasn't consistent. He did what he could do, but I only trusted myself because I knew what I was capable of, and I knew that you need your mom, so I wasn't going to depend on him to be a consistent caregiver. I could only trust myself to do it. So I looked at it as if I was a single mom and you were my responsibility because I brought you into this world and I could only trust myself to provide the best that I could for you.
Okay, so then how was it then that I was able to come? Did they just I guess when she let the government know?
She did, and they told her, well, I need to provide evidence that I'm capable of taking care of you. So I had to submit because I was working less than a year. I didn't even file taxes yet, but I had to submit my pay stub to prove that I had an income. And my cousin, who I lived with, she had to submit her tax return to prove that, I lived with her, and together we were capable of providing for you. And so we sent the documents, and it worked.
Okay, so then I come up here at 18 months, right?
You were about 18 months. My mom took you up. Yeah.
Right, so now we are reunited. Yay! Is that a yay? Is it a yay, or how was that? I mean...
Of course.
Okay. So... when I now come, I mean, it's great now that we're together, but now, I'm physically here. So not only do you have to now still take care of yourself, but I'm here as your responsibility, in the flesh. How did you deal with that? But what was that like, now having me here?
So the first thing I did when you came, because when my mom came, she came to Brooklyn. And so I left New Jersey and came back to Brooklyn so I'll be able to be with you and provide for you. My mom stayed with her sister for a while until she got her own place. So we all basically just stayed with my aunt until we got our own place. Once my mom got her own place, then even before she got her own place, I did get a job working at a daycare. So I got another minimum wage job working at a daycare, and it helped that I was at type of facility because I could take you, and so you'll have somewhere to be. Around that time, I applied to college because I knew I didn't want to work a minimum wage job for the rest of my life. It was not going to provide for me adequately nor give you a good quality of life. And I knew having a college education, I mean, as a matter of fact, I give partial credit to my father, because even though he wasn't supportive of me emotionally, psychologically, even as a grandfather, because he really didn't acknowledge you, he basically said when he brought me here that he brought me here to finish my education. And so part of me always felt like, oh, I let him down by getting pregnant at an early age. So I'm going to show him that, I'm going to finish my education. So part of it was to prove to him that having a child didn't mean I couldn't be educated. But the other part was that I felt that was the best way I could come out of poverty, because I didn't want to work a minimum wage job for the rest of my life. And a college education would at least give me a decent job. So within a year, I applied and I got into college.
So let's talk about that, because you got into college, but how were you intending to pay for college? How did that work out?
Because my income level was so low, I applied to community college, and that was the lowest tier of CUNY. So that was more affordable. And because my income level was low and I was a single mom, I did get some financial aid from and grants through the government. Getting it, I felt guilty. So a part of me was like, if the government is going to pay for my education, I'm going to make certain I give back the government adequately. I'm going to apply myself to the best of my ability. And that's exactly what I did. I was able to go to college full time. And for every semester that I went full time and take as much credits as I can. And every semester I made a dean's list, and I finished within the 2 years with more credits than I need, and with a very good GPA, because I was on the honor roll every semester, so I must have been doing something good. Mm-hmm. And that was my way of giving back. Like, even though I didn't have to pay for college, I'm not going to waste this grant. I'm going to work for the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, I think that drive and that kind of integrity is something that is within me, I would say. I mean, if I could be so humble to say that, because I feel like even though maybe I was not as aware, I was still very young when you were doing that, but I know that that's the kind of that you instill those qualities in me, that kind of idea that, almost like to whom much is given, much is required. So it feels as though I'm just amazed because I'm listening to you like as you're not my mom. Like maybe I'm just like interviewing you and you're a stranger. And the fact that you had that kind of drive and integrity at such a young age, where maybe some people might, not care or squander some opportunities or feel sorry for themselves because you weren't necessarily in a great situation, but you chose not to do that. How did you know to do that? What was the driving force? Because,
I think you were, because I didn't want to rob you of a happy childhood. And I believe that while you were young, because when I started college, you were 2 years old, and I involved you in every step of the way. I integrated you within. So it was part of your life as a child, because I can remember vividly at 2 years old when I was going to register at the college, I had you in the stroller and I pushed you because I didn't have much support. So almost everything I did, you were always there. I mean, family members used to call you my pocketbook, or they would call you Little Debbie, because you see me, Jamila was with me. But I love it. I just felt that you were my responsibility. And there were people who didn't think that I could do it. But I was determined. I always have that drive. And so when I went to school, I just included you in everything. My drive was that you are not going to follow my footstep. You are going to have it much, much easier. I struggled, but you didn't have to struggle. I never wanted you to struggle. I just want you to have to be full with knowledge.
Mm-hmm. I mean, okay. All right. So you're now finished 2 years of school. Were you working still at the time, or you were just going to school full time?
For half the time, I worked part time until it became very, very difficult. Then I had to give it up completely. And my mom supported me because I still lived with her. And then I did get some help from the government with you. Mm-hmm. That was, I was very grateful for that.
So like food stamps?
I didn't get food stamps. I get Medicaid, which was good. Mm-hmm. And then I did get cash benefits, but that literally went to pay for your daycare, because where we lived, we didn't have any government daycare where it's subsidized. It was all private daycare. So the money that I got literally went right back into paying the daycare, so that while I'm at college, you could be in school.
Mm-hmm. So how are you doing with spending? I mean, you had to be on a tight budget. Like you had to, or whether you knew it or not. So maybe you weren't like really actually budgeting, but you probably just watched where every dollar was going. It's not like you could.
I did, because at the time, I was just on a very, very slim budget. The money that I get, as long as your daycare was paid, that was the main thing, because you had to be somewhere. And it was a very, very good daycare. I mean, they taught you a lot. And I really didn't need much clothes. I mean, I didn't have a lot, and you didn't have much clothes. You used to wear a lot of secondhand, but they were in good condition. I remember when you were younger, I did get WIC. They used to provide like cereal and milk, because you drink a lot of milk. You didn't really eat much food, so I did get a lot of assistance. And then my mom, of course, because I lived with her, so I didn't have to worry about food. I didn't have to worry about shelter, and I really didn't need much. Coming from Jamaica not so long ago, I was used to living on a simple lifestyle. Things that I do now, half the stuff I do now, I didn't do like. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you got your degree, and what's next? I know you continue. Let's just if we hop forward, just so people have like a reference point. You now have your master's degree in social work, and you do work now. You worked your way up to have a very good paying job, but from you getting your associate's degree to that, what was that journey like? How did you further your education and know to go to the next level, to the next step?
My first college I went to was a community college, so I earned an associate degree within the 2 years period. But then after I earned the associate degree, I realized that the job market for that degree was at a lower scale than if I had a bachelor's degree. And I was very hot at the moment. And I'm like, why stop now? I went for 2 years, did very well. I want the best for my child, so why not go? So what I did, I transferred my associate degree and I went to a 4-year college and I continued, and I went straight and got my bachelor's within 2 years. Started working before I graduated because the last semester of my 4-year college, I started looking for a job because I'm like, it's time to get a full-time job. I can't live on this minimal budget anymore. Literally on nothing, and I was ready to work. So I started looking for jobs before I finished. I could have gone straight to get my master's degree because, again, I did so well that I could have gone straight into my master's and spent 1 year getting my master's. And my professors were encouraging me to just go straight ahead and you could get your master's in a year. But at that point, I needed to start working. So
you needed to earn like some real money at this point.
Some real money.
So what was your degree in when you graduated?
Well, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in social work.
Okay, so it was always social work. So when you started working, it was in the social work field.
Yeah, I started working in the social work field, and I went to work for the next 13 years. I worked.
Okay, before you went back to get your master's, so you
Before
worked
I went
13
back,
years.
yeah.
Now, what I want to talk about is kind of now you raising me, and you have a full-time job, so things are a little bit better in terms of now you at least have some more income, but it's not like you were making a lot of money at that point, right? So one of the things I always remember about growing up is that I always say, we didn't have much, but I never, it's not like I felt that. And I don't know if I've made that clear in my content. It's not like I felt poor. I didn't feel disadvantaged or without. You always poured into me, or I just remember us being, like you said, I was like your pocketbook. I always remember being with you and you pouring experiences into me. And I remember you taking me to like the museum and all these like places. And one of the things that you did that, I credit to this knowledge, this drive that I have for knowledge and bettering myself is like reading. So can we talk about that you, because you saw, and you could tell the story, what you saw my grandmother doing, because my grandmother, she worked for wealthy people in the city, because that's what you can do usually when you come here as an older woman. My grandmother, she was older, so she didn't go back to school. So what she could do was like, either you clean houses or you watch kids. So she ended up watching kids. She would come home and tell you what, and then, all right, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, so my mother was a nanny. That's the job she did when she came. And she worked long hours, literally from 7 to 7 every day. And when she get home at night, she'll share stories of her day. One of the things that I find fascinating is that she will share that not just at nighttime during the day, but of course at night before, she had to feed the kids, give them their dinner, give them their bath. And the last thing she had to do before they went to bed was to read to them. And I was fascinated by that because you're talking about reading to a 3-month-old baby, a 4-month-old, a 6-month. I'm like, reading. And it was so much a part of, it was a regular routine. And as I observed around me when I was around certain ethnic group, I noticed there was a difference with kids and how they speak and what they know. And then I realized that reading is very, very important. So I decided, well, if reading is important, I'm going to read to you too. So I literally started reading to you as soon, I think when you came here, it's not long after when my mom got a job to come home, I started reading to you. And it got expensive to buy books. So then I figure out if I joined the library, I could borrow books. So I would borrow, I say 10 at a time. And every week I go in and I make certain I read those 10 books within the week. And I go back and I get 10 and I go back. And you liked it and I loved it. And because while I was in school doing my work, you felt like you're in school too, because you associate reading because you wanted to be like mommy. Mommy always has to be studying at night, doing papers, writing papers. So you had your books, and I remember I used to give you paper to write on, crayons. I mean, you were very attracted to learning. And I love teaching you things. So whatever I could teach you, I just taught you, and you just sucked it up.
Well, thank you for that. I really do think that actually that helps and helped a lot. And honestly, it's one of the things I want to get back to. I don't read enough. Honestly, guys, I don't read enough now. I want to read more because I remember reading books every night. Like you said, I remember going to the library every week. Every week we went to the library. And so that was just amazing. So thank you for that. So now you're working. At this point, when it came to money, did you know about like how to to invest, to create wealth, or you were at this point just wanting to save and still set me up so that I was okay? Like, what was your mindset around money? Because honestly, I don't remember us really having a lot of or any money conversations, but I will say that you were a saver, and I think that was also I know that was instilled in me. So let's talk kind of about like the money conversations and why we didn't probably have specific ones, and then what you did actually teach me about money.
I didn't have specific money conversation with you, but I was money conscious because my mother was very money conscious. She always believed in saving. She's a lady that doesn't believe in just working and spending everything. And I think I got that from her. And we passed that on to you. So even though I didn't understand the concept of, how you invest money, I did understand that the basic thing was you should not live from paycheck to paycheck. You shouldn't have to be mindful of when the next pay is coming because you're broke and you have bills to pay. So that's one of the things that I live by. And I remember, when at my old jobs not long after college, you had direct deposit, and half the time I really didn't know when it was payday because I tried not to depend on that next coming paycheck. And I remember people around me was like, they were counting down the days. And as soon as you need to go pick the check up and they had to cash it and they had to pay. I never wanted to live like that. So I think that helped.
Mm-hmm. But how did you not live like that? Was it that you weren't spending a lot of money on the nice to haves? You weren't buying a lot of things that were unnecessary. Was it that you were continuing to live a simple life with me? And then it seems like, too, you still were able to use what you had available to you. So it was good that you were able to live with my grandmother, your mom, right? So you were able to save on money that way, right?
Not long after I graduated, I stayed another year or two, and then I moved out on my own. So I had more responsibility. But I always make certain that you were provided for, and I didn't believe in spending unnecessary money, places that it wasn't worth it. So we didn't eat out a lot, but you weren't deprived. I just spent wisely. It was just something conscious. I don't know, maybe growing up in Jamaica, in a humble way, it's something that's internalized within me. But I just didn't believe in spending money wastefully. I always believe in having something set aside. Jamaicans used to say for the rainy day. You should always have something for the rainy day. And I guess that's a simple thing I live by.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I remember you taking me to open up my first bank account.
I forgot that. Yes.
Yeah.
But I know that you reminded me. Yes, when you're 5 years old, I took you to open your bank account. I remember my mother also encouraged me to do that because she always said, don't let Jamila spend, or I shouldn't spend everything I receive, especially for your birthdays and Christmas, that everything shouldn't be spent because you have it. Save it. And then I looked around and I found out that Williamsburg had a minor account. So I physically took you and opened the account. So whenever you get money for special occasions, I would have you put it into that bank account, and it became something that you did. And I showed you how to monitor it so you could deposit the money yourself. and you'll know how much was in it. And so that account stayed till when you were 14 years old and you got your first summer youth job. I remember when you got your first check, again, my mom said to you, now, Jamila, you know you have to save it. You don't spend everything. And it's your check. It was in your name. And what you did, you took most of it. I don't even know, because I never really hover over you and try to control you on your money. I just wanted you to internalize that it's yours and you should protect it. So you took it to the bank and you invested most of it. I think you probably took maybe $100 out and spent, because you yourself wasn't a big spender. You never really bothered me for money. You're very humble with money, and I think that helped you. And it's the same account that you kept right through high school and college until you became an adult.
And I actually like that we're talking about this, because, you know, when I think back, and people always say, like, how did you do some of the things you did? Like buy your condo, which we'll talk about, when I bought my condo at 22, and when I just did certain things. People nowadays, right, will ask me, how did you know to do that? Or how were you saving? And I, like, even though now it wasn't such a vivid memory, like as you're talking about it now, like it's bringing back memories. And like, that's it. Like that was instilled in me, this idea of you actually taking me to the bank, and then you telling me, my grandmother telling me, like, to save most of it. And so, like you said, I got my first job, like, at 14, and I was working ever since. And I do remember saving majority of my check. So I always kept that up through college. So having the money to buy my condo partly was when I had this Inroads internship and I was making some good money as an intern. I saved most of my check. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if that wasn't instilled in me, that saving conversation. And so while you didn't know, and, you know, I didn't know until recently, honestly, like a couple years ago now, about really investing and how to grow money, the one thing that was so pivotal, I think, and I know for me, was the saving part of it. Because it gave me a pot of something to do something with.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, because I work with young people now, one of the things that I find that's holding them back, I see a lot of the young people that I work with, they get jobs and they have to pay rent out of it, or their parents take their money. You know, I wasn't the mom who took my child's money. I think that I was responsible for taking care of you, providing for you your basic needs. And if you're a teenager and you're working, there's no way I could take your money. I'll encourage you to save it, because I know that money is going to go towards your future. And another thing, another side note to that is, I always encourage you to have a little piggy bank in the house. So apart from saving at the bank, you also had a piggy bank at the house where it was your responsibility to put money that you get in there and to accumulate it. And then when it was time to make a deposit, you would count your money out of that piggy bank and take it and make a deposit in your bank account.
Yeah, like, yeah, I need to, you know what, when I now tell my childhood or my story again, when people ask me about money habits, I need to make sure I'm also bringing that up, because that was a big part of what was instilled in me. You were saying that when I was young, you didn't want to take my money. You wanted me to be able to save it.
Yes.
So, because it's interesting, because now people, when they talk about, oh, how do they instill good money habits in their kids, some of it is like, maybe we should charge them rent, or we should teach them responsibility where they do have to pay for certain things. Like there was a story or some stuff going around on the internet about maybe a mom, I think, charging her kid rent, like basically taking money so that the kid could feel what it's like. Now, was the reason why you did not, like you allowed me to have more control of our money is because you knew I was a responsible kid? Like if I was not a responsible kid, or you had some doubts, would you then have maybe stepped in more, or you trusted me because of that? Like, because I know there's some parents maybe listening who have kids who are younger, and they want to make sure, or they want to instill these kind of habits in their kids, but they don't know the way to go about it. It's like, if they do start working, do they make them save, or is it more you encourage them to save and kind of leave it up to them?
Okay, I think for me, the reason why I took my approach is that I didn't have any assets, any material things. So I didn't own a house. I didn't own a car. I didn't have anything. I did have a college degree and I have a decent job. And I wanted you to have more. So I trusted that the money you have, you would save it and you'd be responsible with it. And the mindset that I had is that I wanted you to be able to own your own. And if I take it from you and if I charge you rent, then it's going to take you a much longer time to have your own. And even after you graduated from college and you came back home and you're in a very, very good job, you're probably working more than me at that time, I refused. And you had your own bedroom in my apartment, I refused to take rent from you. Wherein a lot of people like, oh, yes, you should pay rent. And I'm like, no, as long as you're saving it and you putting it towards your own. I wanted when you leave out of my house, you went into your own. I always wanted you to have your own.
Right. Like I would launch and stay launched. It's not like I would have to come back because I didn't have the funds. And when I did graduate, so this is around the time now. So I graduate from college right before I graduate from college, I find the apartment that I bought and you came with me. I remember you coming with me and it was new construction and it was, I needed money to put down to buy it. And I had a lot saved, but I didn't have everything that I needed. They needed 10% at the time. So it was a lot of money for, a 21 or 22-year-old to have that. But you gave me money for that condo. You gifted it to me. You didn't even like do it as a loan. You said, here is a check, which was, a majority of the money that I needed for the first 10%, the down payment. And you just gave it to me. Now I want to know, so this is really important because we're talking about like how to pass the baton down to a generation so they build wealth. And if it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have been able to buy that specific like apartment. And that now is the best thing I did for instilling wealth and now having assets. So I want to make sure I'm making that clear that you didn't have your own. You didn't own a home.
Nope.
But you were working. But you gave me selflessly. You gave me money so that I can now have something. So thank you, one. Again, I thank you all the time for that. But thank you. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about why sometimes like to pass down generational wealth, to create that kind of wealth, that you have to pay it forward in a way sometimes where you don't have, but you're passing it down to the next generation.
I treat parenting from a very personal perspective. My approach to parenting is do to my child as I would like done to me. So while I had the support from, my dad sponsored me here, my mom was here and helped me with certain things, there was a lot of things that I didn't have. And so no one helped me launch. If I had more help than I had, I could have accomplished more. But at the same time, not having a lot make me who I am and gave me the passion. Because maybe if I did have a house, my own home, maybe I would have charged you rent because I was like, okay, this house is going to go to Jamila when anything happened. So, in order for you to succeed, I wanted you to succeed. I didn't want you to struggle the way I struggled and take forever to accomplish something. And I always have the mindset that if you're okay and you're stable financially, independently, then I'm fine. I always said when my child is grown and finished with college, I don't want her to have to come and borrow money from me. If anything, I want to be able to go and borrow from her, which is not my intention. But it's just to know that you are stable financially and you have your own. So that's why I wanted you to have your own, because once you're okay, I know you're younger, you have your whole life in front of you, you will accomplish. The star is the limit. For me, I'm like, I've made my decisions. I've made my mistake. I would be fine. If I live in a small studio, I'll be fine. I don't need a lot to be happy. So, yeah, I wanted you to have what I didn't have.
And you did it. I mean, like I said, like I would not have been able to buy the Dumbo apartment without your assistance with that. And I remember, so when I put the 10% down and you helped me with that part of the 10% for the apartment, it took 2 years to build. So that's kind of what you're talking about, where I lived with you for those 2 years. You didn't charge me rent, but I was able to save a majority of my money before the whole building was completed. And then when it was time to close, I had the additional 10% saved. I had the closing costs saved. And I even had a buffer because actually my paycheck did not cover like my mortgage and my living expenses. So me even actually closing on this condo was a risk because I literally was making like just enough money to get by. Like I literally had no money left. And so I actually had to save up a buffer to be able to live. And if you were charging me rent at that time, I wouldn't have been able to even like sustain myself in the apartment once I moved in. But moved in, I lived on my, my paychecks. I lived off of some of my savings and it worked. And as I started making more money and, I've done some other things since then. But like I said, I feel like I wanted to make sure I had you on the podcast to talk about this because it is so important, I think, for people to hear a story like this, that one, you didn't have much and you came here without much or anything, and you were able to build a good life for yourself. You have a good paying job now. You worked your way up. You did the minimum wage jobs. You went to school. You did the single mom thing. Like, you did it, right? And so there's people listening that are probably in your position right now. Maybe they're a single mom or they're immigrant or they don't have like a lot. And so, we're talking about this whole financial independence movement and, being able to quote unquote retire early and do things you love. And that might seem impossible at this point for some people because there is so much to get over. There's the debt, there's the mindset, there's just the fact that they just don't think they can do it. And what I want to make sure is just highlighted here is that maybe you won't be able to do it because it took you a while to get to the point where, since you came here, so I came here at 18 months, I went to college. By the time I got to college, you were doing better, which is why you were able to even help me, give me money. But that took 18 years for you to build yourself up to be in a position to help me. So if you're listening, it's going to take a while for you to accomplish things. Yeah, it might. It might, depending on your starting point, but it's not impossible. And what's even more encouraging, I think, is that maybe you won't directly see the benefit. I mean, maybe you won't be able to reach financial independence at 40 or 35 because you started later and you had all these things to overcome. But if you have children or you have family that is coming up after you, because you're putting yourself in a better position, they can reach it faster. That's generational wealth. And I think it's especially important for people of color, for coming to, as immigrants especially. So whether you're born here as a person of color, you come here as a person of color, there are just systematic things in which we do need to work a little bit harder to get on the same footing. And that don't write off your journey if you have some things that are not the positives or not the pluses, right? Because if you work hard, you keep your eye on the prize, maybe your daughter, your son, they will take the baton and be further ahead. Just like now, I'm so much further ahead, obviously, than you were. Now that I have this knowledge and, even me understanding even what investing is, I went to school business management, but I wasn't intentional about investing or saving until my early 30s. And now I have kids. And they'll get the baton way sooner than I did too, right? So it's just this is what generational wealth looks like. This is what doing better and doing more looks like, even if it's not a direct benefit to you today. It's really keeping your eye on the prize and doing the work and trusting the process. So I want you to maybe, if you want to leave any encouraging words for someone listening to this, maybe a single mom listening to this, or just someone who thinks that they might not be able to reach their goals in the time frame they want. What message do you want to tell them?
As a mom, I always believe that, my child, I only speak about you, but I do have another daughter. So my children, they did not ask to be here. So it's my responsibility to do the best that I can within my ability for them, to give them the best life that I can give them. So if I'm making $200 a week, I'm responsible for giving my child the best out of that 200, or if it's 2,000. So for mothers listening, just do it from your heart, and remember, you're obligated to your child to provide for that child, to give them love, not just love, but unconditional love and acceptance and structure, and they will pay it forward, because once you provide for them, you're going to be okay. Because right now I'm fine. My girls are grown and I'm fine. I don't have to worry about them. I did for them, and in doing for them, I think the reward was multiplied tremendously, wherein I don't have to do for them anymore. I do for them because I choose to do. I don't do because I have to, because they're in need. So mothers, fathers, parents, if you're listening, do for your children selflessly, and they will be okay, and you will be okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, it's not like do for them and like give them everything, because what you're in your story, in our story, is like you did for me, but it's not like you just gave me everything I wanted. And it was like you're very smart, or you were very conscious, and it was the necessary things. It was the love and attention. That's the one thing when people ask me like, how did you like have the guts to quit your job, or how did you even have the guts to do this podcast? And you're doing all these things. And another thing that you instilled in me was confidence, was to dream big. I always say this: I had big dreams that you never made me feel like my dreams were too big. And so in part of also, teaching your kids the foundation. So yeah, of course, there are probably more specific things we could have talked about personal finance, but you didn't know, right? But what you did teach me, what you did show me through always encouraging me and giving me that confidence that I have now, has allowed me to do the things I'm doing. I would not have the confidence and the grit and the know-how to figure things out without watching you having done it. So Mom, I just want to thank you again for all that you've done for me. I can't say it enough. And, one day I'm going to buy you a house. I know that. You're looking around like, what? I am. It's one of my goals, if you didn't know, but I can't wait to do something like that for you. So thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you too.
I really hope you enjoyed that lovely conversation with my mom. Isn't she amazing? She's really, really, I just can't express how much gratitude I have to her for all the sacrifices that she made to put me in the position I am today. I do not take that lightly. I do not take it for granted. And if you ask me why I work so hard, why I am so determined to win, it's because of my mom. It's because now I have a responsibility to my family, to my kids, to build upon the wealth that she has allowed me to build. So thank you for joining in on that conversation. And I want you to get a couple things, hopefully, from this podcast episode. If you're a parent or a single mom, I hope you can be inspired by this story, and that despite not having the resources that she had wanted herself, she was still able to instill those values in me. I also want you to release any limiting beliefs that you may have about what you can do. So I know things may be harder if you don't have the guidance and resources and the money to start, but that doesn't mean you still can't win, or that your kids still can't win. Look at me. Like, I feel like I'm in a position now that my mom and maybe generations past that didn't have anything would never believe I'm in. And I know that I hope to raise my kids in a way in which now they can pass the baton down to the further generations. Also, I want you to understand that wealth takes time to build. As we discussed earlier in this episode, there is a wealth gap in this country. And so there are systematic things that have stopped us from building wealth as Black people, as African Americans in this country. And while we are becoming more educated and there's still a lot of work to be done, it's still something that we should acknowledge, but not just feel like, that's it. There's nothing we can do. We acknowledge it and we move on and we do the best we can. So especially if you're from an underprivileged or underserved background, it's not impossible. It might be a little harder, but it's not impossible. So the benefit of the inherent wealth that you seek may not be realized in the fast track way you want it. It might be realized by your children like it, was for my mom and for me, but it will pay off and you will see it if you continue to work at educating yourself and are determined to shorten that wealth gap. So once again, I want to thank our sponsor, Wells Fargo, for recognizing the importance of financial education and financial education, especially in the Black community. So thank you for that. And if you want to see the resources and all the great things that they have going on, you can go to wellsfargo.com/financial-education to take advantage of all the comprehensive programs, tools, and resources to help you with your finances. If you want the episode show notes, you can go to journeytolaunch.com/episode 75. There I'll add some childhood pictures of myself and my mom, so check it out. Make sure you're also following me on social media as Journey to Launch. I'm there on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as Journey to Launch, #Journey to Launch. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Send me a DM, share it with your friends. Just let me know. I love when I see you guys talking about episodes on social and when you let me know that you shared it with someone. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Remember, this podcast is free, so it's a lot of great information for you to get jump started on your journey. And I'm just happy to have you here on the path with me. So until next week, keep on journeying, journeyers.